So the NBA starts tonight. We're going to be talking basketball right here at my show. We're planning on this being a year-long thing. Obviously, we'll see. That's my goal. I hope we can continue to do that. Obviously, there's some questions that need to be answered and figure out, and I understand that. But the plan is to keep this thing rolling, right? And obviously, we're going to spend time talking about football, and this is predominantly during the football season going to be a football show. I understand that you guys are here for football, and even more specifically than that, probably the Cincinnati Bengals there as well. But we're going to talk NBA. Additionally, I think this year has an opportunity to be a really good year in the NBA. Now, there's some big injuries coming into the season, which obviously kind of hurts a little bit, right? Tyrese Halliburton, of course, what an incredible NBA Finals we had last year. He blows out his Achilles in Game 7. The Pacers are going to be without him throughout the entirety of the year. They lose Miles Turner there as well. So we'll see. I think I'm interested to see how the Pacers kind of respond here in this year. Kind of feels like a retooling year with no Halliburton, but we'll see. Jason Tatum as well. We'll talk about the Celtics more in depth here in a little bit, but he blew out his Achilles in the playoffs. They're going to be without him this year. They lost a lot of pieces there on their roster. Kind of feels like a retooling year for Boston there as well. Dame Lillard, he's back in Portland, but I believe it's an Achilles as well. We're not going to see him throughout the entirety of the season. So that's 3 stars right there that the NBA is going to be without here at this point. LeBron, of course, is going to miss some time at a lower back issue. He's going to miss the first couple of weeks. Obviously, he's an old player right now. He's going to miss some time regardless, but hopefully that isn't something that lingers for LeBron, because it kind of feels like the type of injury that could, push you out. But look, I'm not going to sit here and bet against LeBron. That's just a losing bet, as he's continued to do it over and over and over again. Kyrie Irving, by the way, of the Dallas Mavericks. We'll spend some more time talking about them on today's show there as well, but he's coming back from the knee surgery. They're going to be without him for the first chunk of the year. But the Thunder, of course, won the title in 7 games. Terrific NBA Finals. The second youngest team to ever win the NBA Finals, and that's scary for the rest of the league, because I fall victim to this, to be honest with you, as these teams win the NBA Finals and you're like, oh, they're going to repeat, they're going to do it again, right? I kind of felt like that with the Celtics winning and the Nuggets winning prior to that, where you're just like, they're so good, how are they not going to win again? And then it doesn't happen. Now here we are again with the Thunder. And this feels like a little bit different, because I think out of the 2 teams I just mentioned, and you throw the Thunder into that mix, they're a team that, they actually could win this thing again, because everybody's back, right, for the OKC Thunder. They are the odds-on favorites to win. I'll have my predictions later in the week with, how I think the playoffs are going to transpire in the NBA. But, at this point, it's hard to bet against the OKC Thunder. They did a lot of great work this offseason. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the reigning MVP, he's back. They gave him, a supermax deal. Jalen Williams, they agreed to a deal with him. Chet Holmgren, they agreed to a deal with him as well. And this is a team that won 68 games last season, and there's real talk about this team potentially being a 70-win team. They're the best defensive team in the NBA. They were last year as well. Some of the guys that they have, the kid from Kentucky obviously is a great player. And then Caruso, who's like their oldest player, and he's like 27, 28 years old. And he's tremendous on the defensive side. And, you get Holmgren back, and you won all those games last year, and Holmgren was, hurt for a big stretch of that time there as well. So they were the best defensive team in the NBA last year, and I kind of anticipate they'll be in that same category here this year, to be completely honest with you. And, I think the big thing for them is, like, are you going to be complacent, or are you going to go out there and, try to win a world championship again? Because all the pieces are there. Sam Presti, their GM, what a genius that guy is. All the picks that he stockpiled, and he's turned them into really good players here for the Thunder. I think the Thunder, they should be a problem for a really, really long time. And again, we'll have our picks later, but they're the odds-on favorite to win the NBA championship. And I think we talk about in college football how Ohio State at this point kind of has separated themselves from the pack, and there's other teams behind them that can win the national championship, but it's like they're not on the same level as Ohio State. Kind of how it feels here going into this NBA season. Yeah, there's some teams that can win, and obviously health and things like that play a big factor, but going into the year, the Thunder have separated themselves from the rest of the pack. So we're talking about 10 teams here on this show. I kind of have picked them as my top 10 teams. I don't want to, everybody, it's another list. That's not really what it is. It's just kind of a preview here at this point, but we're going to talk about 10 teams, and I think I've got the Thunder at 1 going into the year. At 2, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm a Cincinnati guy. I'm not a Cleveland guy. Do I root against Cleveland? Absolutely. I root against Cleveland. And I think they're going to win a lot of games, and then they'll get to the playoffs and, probably lose at some point. Maybe they'll win a couple of series. I don't think they're going to win the NBA championship. Last year, they won 64 games. It was a really good season. I don't think for teams in the NFL and Major League Baseball and the NBA, people say, oh, you didn't win the World Championship, it's a failure. I don't think that is the case for every team, right? Apparently Cal Riley was like, it was a failure that we didn't win the World Series. This year was a success for the Seattle Mariners, right? This year was a success for the Cincinnati Reds. The Cavs, they're at a point where they're winning a lot of games. They've been good for several years now. If they don't win the finals, it's a failure, right? I think if you're one of the top teams in the league, it can be a failure, right? If Joe Burrow is healthy the whole year, you say, yeah, it's a failure if you don't win the Super Bowl. I don't think every team in the National Football League can say that. The Titans, right, going in the year with Cam Ward as a rookie, oh, if we don't win the Super Bowl, it's a failure. No, it's not, right? Now, this year is still a failure for them. Their coach got fired and they won one game and they were lucky to win it, right? But I don't think every team necessarily is like, well, they didn't win the world title, so it's a failure. Cleveland, the Cavs are not in that boat. They've had success. They need to get it done. Defensively, they're incredible, right? Those two bigs there with Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, they're tremendous, and that's going to keep them in each and every game. Now, for them, the concern right now is injuries, right? Donovan Mitchell, obviously, is their best player. There's some questions about him going into the offseason this year, what exactly he's going to be doing. He's a terrific player, but he's worn down a little bit in the postseason over the course of the past few years. Maybe there's some, I hate to say the term load management, but maybe he rests a little bit more this year so he can be fresher down the stretch. But they're going to start this season with some injury issues. No Darius Garland to start the year for Cleveland, and no Max Strus as well. And that's some really good shooting that they're going to have to figure out how to replace in the early parts of the season. Also, Lonzo Ball. I'm a big Lonzo Ball fan, but everybody that knows the NBA and knows basketball knows that he can't stay healthy and stay out on the court. And, there's been reports that they're not going to play him in back-to-back games. Unfortunate, but probably the right call. But I've got Cleveland here at 2 going into the year. The injuries are a concern, but based on some of the success that they've had in previous years, it's kind of a finals or bust type of situation. And for what it's worth, I don't think they're going to be able to get it done. The Houston Rockets, this is a really fun team, right? They had some decisions to make this offseason, and they made, obviously, the big move trading for Kevin Durant, and they gave up Jalen Green, some picks, Dylan Brooks in the process to Phoenix. And when the trade went down, I was kind of like, hey, what are you doing, Houston? You're there. You're just a couple of years away. You've got great youth. You've got a great core. What are you doing? And as time goes on, I start to change my opinion a little bit more with this deal. Because you take a look at what Houston is good at as a team, and you go, oh, they need a guy like Kevin Durant. I get it. It's one of the best players of all time. Lots of teams could use Kevin Durant. But we'll get into specifically why I think KD could really help this team. Now, Fred VanVleet, he got hurt. He's out for the year. That's a massive blow there for the Houston Rockets. He is a tremendous player. You've heard Draymond Green. He went out and said, yeah, the reason we lost in the finals to Toronto several years ago wasn't Kawhi Leonard. It was Fred VanVleet that ultimately kind of raised the bar there and helped them win the series. He was tremendous in the playoffs even last year with Houston. He's going to be out throughout the entirety of the year. And now you look at that Houston team and you go, well, who's their point guard? Well, you drafted a guy last year by the name of Reed Sheppard out of Kentucky. It's going to be his time to shine. We'll see, because they've got questions at point guard without Fred VanVleet. Can Reed Sheppard be that guy that comes in and is that point guard? If that checks out, Houston's going to be really, really good. The size that Houston has is insane. They're like the biggest team in the NBA. Amen Thompson, one of the best, if not the best defender in the NBA. He's tremendous. The size with KD. Jamari Smith is huge, right? Şengün, he's huge, right? I mean, I think he's a guy that might get some MVP votes there at that center spot. You got Steven Adams coming off the bench. So, I mean, that's just tremendous size that you have. Now, here's the stat in particular that I think is going to be a reason why Kevin Durant is going to help them so much. The Rockets had a 43.8% effective field goal percentage on the dribble dribble jumpers last season. That was 27th in the NBA. Well, who's good at that? Kevin Durant, right? You're talking about a mid-range game, right? Off the dribble. Yeah, that's KD right there, and that is going to be fixed this year with him. Now, he's 37 years old. He's getting up there in age, right? He doesn't play a ton of games anymore, but they made this acquisition for the playoffs, and they made it from a leadership perspective there as well. And KD, throughout his career, has shown that, that's not really him. He's not really that leader. He just wants to kind of show up and hoop. That's got to change a little bit this year in Houston. But I think, when you get these guys older in the NBA, like LeBron, I don't think he can really do anything to change his legacy, right? He's the second best player of all time, and that's going to stand regardless of what he does here over the course of the next few years. I think Steph Curry maybe could, improve his legacy over the next few years, but I think Kevin Durant really can here in Houston. Right? Because, people view him as, he's a great player. He's one of the best players of all time, obviously a Hall of Famer, but, he needed Steph Curry in order to win a world championship. And it's a Rockets team that they can win the world title. And if KD can stay healthy, if they can stay healthy as a team and continue to develop, and he can lead and kind of fill some of those gaps, they're, as far as scoring the basketball from a mid-range perspective, this is a team that can win it all. And if he wins another title, I think people totally view Kevin Durant's career very differently. Because ever since he left Golden State, he hasn't really done much at all, right, in the NBA. The Phoenix thing, that didn't work. We thought it would work with Booker. Clearly did not. And, the Brooklyn thing obviously didn't work as well. He has a chance here to really kind of reshape how people view his career. I've got the Rockets at 3. I think very highly of them, despite losing Jalen Green in that trade. 4, I have the Nuggets. They completely revamped their front office. Obviously, they fired Michael Malone last year. The NBA, it's crazy. People getting fired like he won the title a couple years ago and you fired him and you were going to the playoff. I don't get it. Jokic is the best player on the planet. He's got 3 MVPs. He could have 5 or 6, to be honest with you. He is tremendous. You've got some, questions there defensively, right? Can he really anchor a defense? Obviously, that is a concern. They made the big move this offseason. They traded Michael Porter Jr. They get back Cam Johnson. I think that certainly can help. But the biggest question for them is how can they play when Joker is off the court, right? Because they got absolutely smoked last year when Joker was not on the floor. And it's going to be a lot of, Jamal Murray. He was tremendous when they went to the finals and won it, right? And hasn't really done much since. Has had, trouble staying on the court. Aaron Gordon, right? Those kind of guys need to be better than they were last year. And, they've got some new guards in the mix, and we'll see how they do. But, with Joker, the best player on the planet, they're always going to be a threat. But there are lots of questions, lots of new faces, and they got to find out how to play better on the defensive side of the ball there as well, because they had the worst defense out of any playoff team last year. I get it's the NBA and regular season. Does defense really mean a ton? You can make that argument, but they're not good enough on the defensive side, and they haven't been good enough with Joker not on the floor with Denver. But with him, they're always a threat. I've got him at 4. Minnesota at 5. Ant Edwards, you've been to the conference finals the past 2 years. Time to take that next step, right? I said it with Cleveland earlier. Minnesota, you've been around, you've been deep in the playoffs before. Championship or bust. What are you going to do, right? Anthony Edwards last year kind of added the three-pointer to his game. I think there towards the end he was taking too many threes, but what's he going to add this year? I think they're going to need him more from a playmaking perspective, which I think is something that Minnesota has struggled with. Conley, I think the world of him, but he's close to 40 years of age. He wore down a little bit in the playoffs and he wasn't as good. I think he's still a solid player, but is he going to be your starting point guard throughout the duration of the season? I don't know. Dante DiVincenzo is a guy that I think could, step in there and perhaps take over that spot a little bit. He was tremendous in Golden State a couple of years ago. He was good in Milwaukee, and he was good, even last year as well. So I think he's a really good player, and he perhaps could take over some of that load. Then you got Dillingham, right? He's, could he perhaps burst on the scene a little bit there at that point guard spot for the T-Wolves? But, Ant, he's a guy, it's like, okay, we've seen a lot from you, but are you going to be able to elevate your team? Are you going to be able to take them to the finals? Are you going to be able to mess around and potentially win an MVP? I mean, he's got all the talent in the world to do it, and he's got good pieces around him. They're, top of their 7 of their top 8 scorers are coming back, and it's all in front of them here at this point for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I've got them at number 5 here going into the year. Number 6, Golden State. They've got a lot of age on the team, obviously. Their big acquisition this offseason, they bring in Al Horford, which I think is going to be a tremendous fit. Al Horford also is a really, really old player. And you also have guys like, Steph Curry. Obviously, he's going to be 38 by the time the postseason gets here. Draymond Green, certainly up there in age. Jimmy Butler no longer is a spring chicken. But I think this Warriors team is going to be really, really good this year. The biggest thing for them is how are they going to win games when Steph and Draymond aren't playing? Because they're going to have to do that. I think Steph and Draymond, they're only going to play, 65, 70 games, and that's even if they're healthy, right? They're just, they got to save them for the playoffs, right? And who knows, right? If Steph Curry is healthy in the conference in the semifinals this past year, if Steph Curry against Minnesota there is able to, not have the hamstring injury, right, and play, then I think, they're in a spot where maybe they can mess around and win. As long as Steph is out there, he's one of the best players still in the NBA despite his age, and they're going to have a chance to be really good. I think they're a team that can win the championship. I really do believe that. But guys like Pods and Kuminga, the Kuminga thing, it's kind of, if I kind of felt like, they were going to move off him, but, now he's back. Steve Kerr wasn't playing him. They're going to have to trust him here at some point to go out there along with Podziemski to really help things offensively for them, especially when the guys I mentioned aren't out there. And, we'll see if they have the ability to do that. But they're a veteran group. They're a real cerebral group. The way they play, I think, can lead to postseason success, and I think they're going to be a threat. I think the Warriors, they aren't done quite yet with the core that they have. I have them at 6. 7, I have the Knicks. Some people would say they should be higher than that. Thibodeau obviously out. Mike Brown is in. I'm interested to see how the Knicks look later in the year because Tom Thibodeau would just play his starters every game, every minute of every game throughout the whole year. And it's just like, dude, what are you doing? You can't do that. And I just don't think – and look, I think the world of Jalen Brunson. He is an unbelievable basketball player, but I don't know if he can be the best player on a team that wins a title. I just don't know. Can he be the best player on a team that gets to the conference finals? Sure. Could he be the best player on the team that even gets to the NBA finals? Yeah, maybe. But I don't know if he can be the best player on a team that wins the NBA finals. Look, there's going to be a lot of talk about Giannis. I'm not going to really talk about Milwaukee here on this list, but this is maybe his last year in Milwaukee. If they get off to a bad start, that the rumors and all that's going to be going, the talk's going to be going crazy as it relates to Giannis. Lots of people think he's going to be a Knick. I think certainly if you put Giannis on the Knicks, that is a serious, serious threat. But I'm interested to see, with Brown taking over, the ability that he has there as a head coach. He's won in Sacramento, did a tremendous job. So, won in Cleveland several years ago, obviously with LeBron. So, they've got pieces, obviously, with Cat and OG and Bridges and those guys, but I don't know if it's enough to get them over the top. They're going to win. They're going to win playoff series, but winning the finals, I don't know. I've got the Knicks at 7. The Lakers I have at 8. No LeBron, of course, to start the year. Luka might win MVP. That's kind of what my gut tells me right now is Luka Doncic might go mess around and win the MVP. I think he's coming differently this year. He's lost the weight. He looks, like he has a new focus. I think he's going to, at first when he got traded, I think it was sadness, shock, disappointment, maybe even a little bit depression there as well, getting traded from Dallas. But I think that has transitioned now this offseason to motivation and maybe even a little bit of rage as well as Luka takes the floor for LA this year. It's crazy because he got traded, but he's one of the best players in the NBA. I don't love how much he whines on the court, whatever, fine. But from a playmaking perspective there on that backcourt with him and Austin Reeves, by the way, contract year for Austin Reeves here this season, they can do some serious damage. Can the Los Angeles Lakers? Obviously, they're not the same team with LeBron out there. Even if he's healthy, they can't expect him to play a bunch. He's still tremendous despite the fact he's 50 years old or however old LeBron is. So they definitely need him back. But the reason they lost in the playoffs last year is because they didn't have a center, right? I mean, they're trying to, Jackson Hayes, throwing him out there a little bit. He's not an elite NBA player, local guy. I know we'll show love, but come on. That's not going to help you get to a championship, right? And they kind of were going with the small ball. And Gobert just obviously ate them alive in the playoffs last year. And, that's got to get fixed. And what did they do this offseason? They bring in DeAndre Ayton, and he is their wild card this year. If DeAndre Ayton is a hit, the Lakers could win the championship. If he is not, you're looking at another first-round exit or maybe even a play-in team, right? DeAndre Ayton has to stay healthy and he has to be productive for this team. That was the move that they made to hopefully get them over the hump. We'll see, because then it's more Jackson Hayes and Vanderbilt and those guys if you don't have them. And that's certainly going to be an issue. Now, Luka has struggled staying healthy. He hasn't played more than 70 games since his rookie year. So that obviously could hurt him with the MVP. And obviously, if LeBron's out and Luka's out, now you're in deep trouble if you're the LA Lakers. But I think they have a lot of upside. The playmaking from Doncic and Reeves in the backcourt, if those guys are out there and healthy, is tremendous. And really excited to see that here. I've got them at 8. At number 9, I've got Dallas. Look, I might be, too high on Dallas. But look, I get Cooper Flagg is 18 years old. I understand that. There's going to be growing pains. That's fine. Cooper Flagg is going to be an unbelievable NBA player. Cooper Flagg is going to win a world championship at some point in the NBA. He is tremendous. And a lot of these first overall picks, they go to a team and it's like, okay, you got to be the guy right away. And it's just some kid out there in the NBA and he's trying to find his way and they're asking him to be the guy. And that's a problem. Not the case here in Dallas. You had AD. Yeah, that guy's pretty good. Now, obviously, Anthony Davis has the issue staying healthy, but Davis is out there and he can kind of be the guy for him, be the alpha on the court, and have Cooper Flagg kind of get used to the flow of an NBA game. They can still pick up a lot of wins early in the year. Kyrie, as I mentioned at the top of this segment, recovering from the knee injury. They're going to be without him for a significant portion of the year. But that front court for Dallas is really big and they're really athletic and they move around really well. Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington. Right, he's like a sixth man who potentially could be a starter for you there as well. Now, from an offensive, playmaking perspective, you kind of worry about that a little bit with no Kyrie Irving, but who can do that really well? Oh yeah, the 18-year-old Cooper Flagg. And I think if he kind of settles in as more of a, early on in his NBA career, and he's more of just kind of a playmaker and not necessarily asked to score the basketball a ton, that could be dangerous for the Dallas Mavericks. They have a great coach in Jason Kidd. They signed D'Angelo Russell. He's probably going to be their point guard. He struggled last year, but he's just a streaky guy. He can be really good. He can be really bad. We'll see what version of D'Lo you get. You have some questions defensively, right? Clay obviously can't guard like he used to, but he can still shoot the rock, right? And I expect him to make a lot of threes this year. For Dallas, I think they're a good team. I think they can mess around and go on a run here. Cooper Flagg, super excited to see him, especially when Kyrie gets back. Then you got AD and Cooper Flagg and Kyrie and Klay Thompson shooting. That's a fun team. And, look out. Dallas, people acted like they're dead and gone after that Luka trade. Well, then they lucked into getting Cooper Flagg, and they might be good. At number 10, and I might be reaching a little bit here, but I've got Boston. I think a lot of people out there, it feels like a rebuild year, right, for Boston, right? Tatum's out. That's huge. One of the best players on the planet, out with an Achilles, going to be gone the whole year. And then you lost a lot of pieces, right? You lost Al Horford, you lost Kristaps Porzingis, and you lost Luke Cornett. Oh, my goodness, all your size. Yeah, it's gone. So that is certainly an issue. But, Brad Stevens and Joe Mazzulla, they're not going to be wired to sit there and, we'll just kind of rebuild this year and, it's on to the following year when we get JT back. That's not how those boys roll, all right? And, by the way, you still have Jaylen Brown and Derek White, who wouldn't surprise me at all if they're both all-stars this year. They're great, and you can win a ton of games with them. They're going to be chucking threes, right? Nobody shot threes like the Celtics did last year. Well, guess what? They're going to be shooting even more this year. I worry about the size, the lack of size. That ultimately is probably what is going to hold them back. But this is a team that's won a ton of games for a long time, and I don't just think they're going to fall off a cliff here. They still have Jaylen Brown. They still have Derek White, and Mazzulla's going to get the most out of the guys that he has out there. I still got Boston at 10. Do they belong at 10? Probably not. Probably like a 15, right? Should be more middle of the pack. But I'll go with Boston here at the 10 spot. And some people would probably say I'm crazy for not having the Clippers on this list. I just think they're too old. And I know I just said the Warriors are going to be good, and they're pretty old too. You added some guys, Bradley Beal, but what did he do in Phoenix? Oh, yeah, nothing. Brook Lopez, solid. He's a dinosaur, right? He's really old. You had John Collins. Chris Paul, the point guard, think the world of him, but he's old as well. Kawhi Leonard, he's got the injury issues, and he's got the, whatever lawsuit that he's going through right now or whatever scandal. I don't really know the details of that here at this point, but, Kawhi's got some issues there as well. So, and James Harden, of course, is really, really old for them additionally. So I don't know. I don't view the Clippers as a threat. Maybe I should have them in the top 10, but I don't really view them as a threat. And a team that, the Atlanta Hawks, look for them this year. They might kind of burst onto the scene and do some good things there. Obviously, a lot falls on the shoulders of Trae Young. He's done it before. They have been very good the past few years, but I think they made some acquisitions, good draft picks, steps in the right direction. Look out for Atlanta to be a solid team. But clearly here, the West is a lot better than the East. Kind of feels like several years ago, right, where that was kind of the case. The West is loaded and the East is wide open. So there's plenty of opportunity for other teams. Obviously, didn't really talk about the Bucks. Giannis has the ability to carry that team. And, we'll see. They got to get out to a hot start or things are going to get kind of noisy rather quickly for Giannis there in Milwaukee, because obviously there's already been reports and rumors that he wanted out, in Milwaukee. So we'll see. But that's kind of our NBA preview. 10 teams wanted to discuss. We'll have our predictions for conference finals later in the week. We'll do more college basketball stuff, but that was kind of our sprinkle there as we kind of get into the NBA here.